Thanks for joining us. We have major breaking news to take you through tonight. You're looking live at Parliament Hill, where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Minister Dominic LeBlanc both expected to address the media at some point this evening, laying out details about how Canada plans to fight back against U.S. tariffs. A senior Canadian official says the U.S. is planning to slap 25% tariffs on most Canadian goods starting Tuesday. One exception is on Canadian energy. That tariff will be 10%. Now, Canada is expected to hit back, but sources have told CBC the U.S. is ready to increase tariffs if Canada retaliates. All of this will have a major impact here at home. Canada sends almost $2 billion worth of daily goods and services to the U.S. That amounts to more than 20% of Canada's gross domestic product. We have got extensive coverage for you tonight, including what this all means for our province. Let's bring in senior Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley. Now, we know Trudeau had a call with premiers across the country just a short time ago. Mike, you've been working your sources. What have you learned?
Yeah, so Shannon, this call between Prime Minister Trudeau and the premiers was after Canada got the official word from Washington that the tariffs were coming, that they're coming on Tuesday, and it would be 25% on all Canadian exports to the U.S., with the exception of energy exports getting 10%. So in that meeting, we are told by a source in a provincial government that there was a lot of frustration with the Prime Minister and the Premiers feeling that it was unfair for this to be tied to fentanyl, which is very explicit in what's coming out from the White House right now, because Canada is not the problem with fentanyl getting into the U.S. The consensus among the Prime Minister and the Premiers is that Donald Trump is using fentanyl as an excuse to slap these tariffs on Canada. We've heard from this source in a provincial government that Canada's response is going to be two-phased. Now, we're waiting to hear this directly from the Prime Minister, but what CBC News has been able to learn so far is that there will be retaliatory tariffs on day one, immediately, on roughly $20 billion worth of goods coming up from the U.S., and that this is roughly double what Canada was considering its initial retaliatory tariff response to be. And after a couple of weeks, there would be a much larger list of retaliatory tariffs if nothing has changed in the meantime. There would then be a further phase, kind of what they're calling a phase 2, according to this source, further escalation, non-tariff measures such as export controls. In other words, shutting off the supply of certain things from Canada to the U.S., but that wouldn't happen until there was further consultation between the Prime Minister, between the Prime Minister and the Premiers, and with industry across Canada. Again, all of that information is attributed to a source in a provincial government.
Okay, so strong moves expected to be coming from the federal government, which we should hear from the Prime Minister later tonight. We've also just gotten a statement from Doug Ford. What's he saying? Premier Ford put out this statement, and we can take a look at some of it right now. The federal government has my full support for a strong and forceful response that matches U.S. tariffs dollar for dollar. Ford goes on to say, we need to maximize our points of leverage and use them to maximum effect. The federal government needs to also pursue every legal route to challenge these unfair, unjustified, and illegal tariffs. So that's an interesting aspect that we're hearing there from Doug Ford, the potential legal challenge to this, because, in fact, Donald Trump is imposing tariffs on a country with whom he has a free trade agreement, the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement. Well, Mike, all of this is unfolding. Ontario's in the middle of a provincial election campaign. We know Ford had 2 appearances today, but that's got the opposition questioning the province's ability to be able to respond to these tariffs.
Yeah, so Doug Ford was at a campaign event in Brampton, so he's wearing 2 hats today. He is the Premier of Ontario, but he's also the Ontario PC leader campaigning for re-election. And we've got some images of Doug Ford at this campaign event. He carries a sign that says tariffs in capital letters, and he takes it over to this giant industrial crushing machine and puts it in between the jaws of this machine and crushes the tariff sign. And, the the thought that I had, Shannon, honestly, is if only a provincial politician could find it this easy to stop Donald Trump's actual tariffs. So, this, you see this as the campaign photo op. Doug Ford did have some fairly strong language about the tariffs. We heard something from him just shortly after we got the news from the Canadian government that these tariffs were coming. Here's what he had to say.
We are seeing a threat, an economic war launched from President Trump. He wants to come and destroy our families. He wants to destroy every job, take every single business, destroy our communities.
Now, this tariffs issue is absolutely dominating the early days of this Ontario election campaign. And, the opposition parties, they're kind of stuck between wanting to say, here's what our response would be, but also they're criticizing Doug Ford for calling an election campaign when they say he should be having his full attention focused not on getting reelected, but on actually doing the job of being premier and figuring out what the response would be. We had Bonnie Crombie of the Liberals out at a campaign event in Toronto revealing her campaign bus. Here's a little bit of what she had to say.
Where's Doug Ford? Is he on the job, at his desk in his office, protecting us? No. He's roaming around the province because he called an unnecessary and expensive election so he could protect his own job.
So the theme that we're hearing here from Bonnie Crombie of the Liberals, as well as Marit Stiles, the leader of the Ontario NDP, is basically an idea that somehow Doug Ford can't actually respond as quickly to these tariffs as he could if the government was not in election mode, if his party was not in election mode, and the government was still actually officially in power. Marit Stiles gave an interview this morning to CBC Radio's Fresh Air, the program that goes all across the province of Ontario. Here's some of what she had to say.
It's false for Doug Ford to be out there pretending like he's Captain Canada. This has got to be a unified approach across the country. And, Doug Ford calling this election put us in a very, very difficult position as a province.
All right, so you can expect that the response to Donald Trump's tariffs is going to continue to dominate the debate on the campaign trail in the days to come. Shannon?
Mike, all of this is very fluid. We know you're keeping tabs on everything. One thing we did hear from the province previously is that we could see American booze pulled off store shelves. So that is something that is within the provincial government scope to fight back. What else could the province do? Yeah,
because, retaliatory tariffs are absolutely only within the powers of the federal government to decide. I mean, obviously, Justin Trudeau is consulting with the premiers on what exactly to do about that. But what has been floated before about what Ontario can do specifically. For instance, controls on electricity. A lot of electricity is supplied from Ontario across the border into Michigan, for instance, and that would be one of those escalating kind of actions that could be taken after retaliatory tariffs. When Doug Ford's been asked about this, though, about what exactly are you going to do, in your role as premier, about these tariffs, he's been pretty vague about it in recent days. He's kind of been saying, I want to wait and see what happens. Well, now we do have the tariffs, and so time now for more specific questions to Doug Ford about what precise actions his government is going to take.
We know you'll be the one putting them to him. Thanks so much, Mike. We appreciate all your analysis on this major developing story tonight. Well, let's turn now to the U.S. government. Officials say they're slapping these tariffs on Canada over concerns about illegal immigration and drug trafficking. Chris Reyes has that part of the story.
President Donald Trump is making good on his promise to hit Canada with tariffs. The breakdown, 25% on goods, 10% on energy resources, affecting billions of dollars worth of Canadian products that cross into the U.S. yearly. The shockwaves are hitting far and wide.
We're in a moment that is historic, existential threat to the country. It's not just an economic attack. I believe this to be an attack on Canadians, an attack on their values, an attack on our sovereignty. And it's a moment where we need to stand strong and united in the face of such an assault.
President Trump confirmed the tariffs in a late afternoon statement from the White House, writing this: "The extraordinary threat posed by illegal aliens and drugs, including deadly fentanyl, constitutes a national emergency under the International Emergency Economics Powers Act. Until the crisis is alleviated, the tariffs will be imposed on Canada as well as Mexico and China."
Today, for us as Canadians, everything has changed forever right now. Everything we knew is different. We are going to have to be more creative than we've ever been in the last 40 or 50 years in terms of how we use and lever economic policy in our country.
In the statement, the White House explains that the president is using tariffs as a tool to put American safety and national security first. Industry experts in Canada say the tariffs will have a seismic impact on the Canadian economy, possibly plunging the country into recession and causing massive job losses.
The president may be feeling that he can ride this out for a period of time. We're much more vulnerable. I mean, the job losses here could be quite serious, and we're not in a financial and fiscal position to be able to be responding and doing this for the long haul.
The U.S. has also said it plans to escalate the tariffs should Canada or the other countries retaliate. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
We are expecting to hear tonight from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to address the media, laying out how Canada plans to respond. Meantime, as Kate McKenna shows us, the reaction that's been pouring in has been strong and swift from coast to coast.
It's a major blow from Canada's closest ally, threatening hundreds of thousands of jobs and pushing Canada into an era of economic uncertainty.
25% in automotive will cause for a shutdown of the industry in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico within a week.
This is devastating news for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, no doubt for the people across the country.
Ottawa has signaled as recently as yesterday it's ready to fight back.
Should there be tariffs, we will be ready and we will respond and we will have a strong retaliation plan.
We're going to have to retaliate, yes, with tariffs of our own, and that will be painful, but there is not a choice. He only will recognize strength, and that is the only hand that we have to play right now.
The trade war looms, with sources telling CBC News Americans are threatening to increase the already steep tariffs if Canada retaliates. Already, Trump's plan could cost Canadian jobs.
This would effectively mean a modest recession for Canada. Our unemployment rate, which is sitting at 6.7%, could easily go to 7.5%, 8%.
He's chosen to tear up decades of goodwill that has made life better for workers on both sides of the border.
Some say these tariffs mark a shift in Canada's relationship with the United States.
I think Donald Trump has a game plan in his own head about a manifest destiny, running the hemisphere, being the top alpha dog in the world.
It's a shakedown. We've never seen anything like it. I can't think of any American president who's behaved like this.
The Prime Minister spent the day meeting with his cabinet and the premiers. He's set to announce the next steps later this evening. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
Scrambling tonight are businesses across the country trying to find a way to deal with these tariffs. Nicole Williams has that part of the story.
For Jessica Miao and her partner, business was just getting good. The Toronto bra manufacturers recently expanded into the U.S. market.
Our American customer base is around 30 to 50% every single month.
But now a 25% tariff is in place on Canadian exports into the States.
Because our bras will be more expensive for American consumers to purchase, that they're going to seek other American alternatives.
Businesses across the country now trying to grapple with such a devastating blow, and advocates say tariffs on exports won't even be the worst of it.
If Canada impose counter tariffs, it will also impact small and medium size here in Canada, because suddenly their imports from the U.S. will be more expensive. Therefore, it will be more expensive for consumers to buy their daily products.
People eat out less, they buy less clothing. The pocketbook just gets a bit tighter for everybody, which has this ripple effect through the economy.
And then there are entire industries in the line of fire.
it's the wake-up call that you just don't want to get. We have made inroads into the American market for our scallop products in particular, and right now we're looking at 50% of our sales into the U.S. market.
Industry leaders across the country fearing 3 possible outcomes: businesses relocating altogether to the U.S., projects and investments into manufacturing in Canada put on pause, and job losses.
No one wants that, so that's why we need help in order to help businesses continue to invest in Quebec and not lose these jobs.
With the tariffs now official, businesses say there's only one good thing from this: no more waiting to see if this will actually happen. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
Here in Ontario, we know the auto sector is a major employer. Let's bring in Jeff Gray. He's the president of Unifor Local 222 in Oshawa. Jeff, thanks for joining us tonight. Take us through your reaction and what you're hearing from workers.
Well, I've spoken to many members, and much like myself, we're all on edge. We're not in control of this situation. You know, normally with the union, we're always bargaining with the company, and in this case, with Donald Trump, there's very little control in this situation, and we're very nervous.
Yeah, absolutely. For a while, it was, all the uncertainty looming over, but now we have at least some of the details. We have a day, Tuesday. We know the Prime Minister is expected to lay out Canada's plan to fight back. What are you going to be listening for from the federal government?
Well, it's funny you mentioned the federal government, because here we have a Prime Minister that prorogued Parliament at the most important time in our history right now, with Donald Trump coming in and levying these tariffs. And he prorogues Parliament for 3 months. Essentially, we're at a standstill with no leader, and now he's going to go on the air and fight back. But we need better support, obviously, from the federal government. Get their act together and get our leader in place and make the deals with Donald Trump that we need to get rid of these tariffs and build trucks here in Oshawa.
Yeah, absolutely. We know the auto industry is a key player in Oshawa. It's been through a lot already. What might the situation mean now there? I mean, you've already been through so much.
So, in just in my 20 years, we've gone through so much. We lost the truck plant in 2007. We went through the financial crisis in 2009 and 10. We went through General Motors not allocating product to our plant in 2018. We fought through it all. Thankfully, Jason Gale in 2020 was able to bargain the truck plant back to Oshawa. And, finally, we felt like we were on solid ground. And here we are, something that's beyond all of our control. And it's very upsetting, very nervous. And like I said earlier, we're all on edge.
Absolutely. And I know, as you say, it's out of your control, but how might the union respond to all of this?
Well, the union, we're taking action, I can tell you. We have meetings with the Premier coming up this week. We've talked to just about every politician we can, and we're going to put pressure on the government to, provincially anyways, that we can talk to and see what kind of mechanisms can be in place. We got to keep these doors open. These tariffs, we know one thing, these tariffs are probably going to be temporary. We cannot lose auto assembly plants here in Ontario and have them close the doors, because they will never come back. We need to keep the lights on and those lines rolling temporarily while these tariffs are in place, and find some sort of solution and common ground.
Yeah, absolutely, because I'm sure what everybody is asking tonight, is my job safe? Like, am I going to have a job?
I think we're asking that all across Canada, and all the tariffs and all the sectors that the tariffs have been levied on. None of us know how this is going to play out. This is so unusual. And for here we are for a fentanyl problem at our border. None of us really knew that existed. And I think it's something well above and beyond that. And we need a leader at the federal level elected to deal with Donald Trump and put an end to this madness.
Well, I know there's so much uncertainty, so much fear. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us tonight. Jeff, we really appreciate all your insight, and I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Thank you so much.
He is the president of Unifor Local 222, representing auto sector workers in Oshawa. Just such a busy news day, so I'm happy to chat about the weather, even though it was freezing outside.
You know, it was freezing outside today, Shannon, but it was very sunny and
That's
beautiful
true.
where we are.
Yes.
Yeah,
We had
and
some
you know what?
sunshine.
We had the sunshine, freezing temperatures. Now, the good news is it's going to get warmer. The bad news is there is going to be some snow on the way. I know that a lot of people, if my commute to work today is any indicator, a lot of people spent today in their cars driving everywhere. But that's going to be trickier in the days ahead. We do have snow coming in this evening around northern Ontario. Our friends in Thunder Bay and the Sioux will see that first, but most of the province is going to see it as we get into the afternoon and the evening. Snow coming through with a second system coming through on Monday. More on that in a second. Going into Sunday, like I said, that snow coming through, it's not a lot of snow that we're talking about, but it's when it comes through and how much comes through. Sunday afternoon, you're talking about 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Those dinner time hours is when you could be looking at that snow coming through, about 1 to 3 centimeters per hour over those hours. Again, we're not talking about a lot of snow, but it's mostly about that timing coming through during those busy Sunday dinner time hours. At the end of the day, we're looking at maybe 5 centimeters around Niagara, less than 3 centimeters around the Golden Horseshoe and the GTA. And again, it's the timing of it and hitting those roads that we have to look out for. But although tomorrow is going to continue to be cold, you'll notice not nearly as cold as it has been. That'll bring some fog into the area, that mixture of the warming up of the temperatures and the melting snow, something to be aware of. And then that second system coming through Monday morning, which is mostly going to be a rain event, depending on which side of this line you fall on and where exactly it comes in. That's going to be coming through on Monday as the temperatures go up, but a messy week, as you can tell, is coming ahead with temperatures going up and down with a messy winter mix depending on the day that we're going to be looking at. So if you go to our nation's capital going into this week, you can see frozen temperatures, and then we suddenly drop and then rise again. It's going to be a messy week depending on where you are. Something to keep in mind, especially on all of those commutes.
Okay, good advice. Thanks so much, Ward.
Always a pleasure.
That's our show for you tonight. Thanks so much for watching.